World War II remains one of the most pivotal events in human history, reshaping nations, borders, and global politics. For the United States, its role in this conflict was transformative. Before the war, the United States was a growing power but still largely isolationist. However, by 1945, America had emerged as a dominant global superpower, its influence stretching across continents. This is the story of how the war not only ended a global conflict, but propelled the United States into a position of unrivaled influence and set the stage for a decades-long Cold War with the Soviet Union. In the late 1930s, the world was on the brink of disaster. Europe had plunged into war as Nazi Germany, under Adolf Hitler, invaded Poland in 1939. In Asia, Japan had been aggressively expanding its empire for years. Meanwhile, the United States under President Franklin D. Roosevelt remained reluctant to enter the conflict. America had endured the Great Depression, and its foreign policy was largely shaped by isolationism. Roosevelt, I have said this before, but I shall say it again and again. Your boys are not going to be sent into any foreign wars. Yet as the war raged on in Europe and the Pacific, Roosevelt and his administration recognized that the threat posed by Axis powers could not be ignored. The United States began to provide material support to its allies through the Lend-Lease Act, supplying Britain and the Soviet Union with essential war materials. But for America, direct involvement was still not on the horizon until December 7, 1941. December 7, 1941, a day that would forever alter the course of history. Japanese forces launched a surprise attack on the United States naval base at Pearl Harbor, Hawaii. In just over 2 hours, more than 2,400 Americans were killed, and much of the Pacific Fleet lay in ruins. Roosevelt, yesterday, December 7, 1941, a date which will live in infamy. The United States of America was suddenly and deliberately attacked by naval and air forces of the Empire of Japan. The attack propelled the United States into full-scale involvement in World War II. Within days, the United States declared war on Japan, and soon after, Germany and Italy declared war on the United States. America was now engaged in a global conflict on two fronts, Europe and the Pacific. Once committed to the war effort, the United States became the arsenal of democracy. The country's industrial capacity shifted into overdrive, as factories that had once produced automobiles now churned out tanks, planes, and weapons for the war effort. This mobilization not only fueled the American economy, lifting it out of the Great Depression, but also provided essential supplies to the Allies. Women entered the workforce in unprecedented numbers, taking on roles in factories, shipyards, and other critical industries. The iconic figure of Rosie the Riveter symbolized the essential role women played in supporting the war effort on the home front. By 1944, American war production outpaced that of all other Allied nations combined. This immense economic and industrial power was a key factor in the eventual Allied victory. Act 4, The Turning Points, D-Day, and the Pacific Theater. In Europe, one of the most significant turning points came on June 6, 1944, D-Day. Allied forces led by General Dwight D. Eisenhower launched Operation Overlord, the largest amphibious invasion in history. Over 156,000 American, British, and Canadian troops stormed the beaches of Normandy, France. This successful invasion marked the beginning of the end for Nazi Germany. Meanwhile, in the Pacific Theater, the U.S. was fighting a brutal island-hopping campaign against Japan. Major victories like the Battle of Midway in 1942 had shifted the momentum in favor of the Allies. But the cost was high, with fierce battles such as Iwo Jima and Okinawa showcasing the relentless fighting spirit of both sides. Act 5, The Manhattan Project and the End of the War. As the war dragged on, the U.S. had been secretly developing a weapon that would forever change the course of warfare, the atomic bomb. Under the top-secret Manhattan Project, scientists worked around the clock to harness the power of atomic energy. On August 6, 1945, the U.S. dropped the first atomic bomb on the Japanese city of Hiroshima. 3 days later, a second bomb was dropped on Nagasaki. The devastation was unimaginable, and soon after, Japan surrendered, marking the official end of World War II. Act 6. America emerges as a global superpower. With the war over, the United States found itself in a position of unparalleled global power. Its military was the strongest in the world and its economy was booming. The US played a central role in shaping the post-war world, helping to establish the United Nations and spearheading efforts to rebuild war-torn Europe through the Marshall Plan. However, this newfound global dominance also set the stage for a new kind of conflict, one not fought on battlefields but in political arenas, proxy wars, and an arms race, the Cold War. The United States and the Soviet Union, once allies against the Axis powers, now stood on opposite sides of a global ideological divide. The era of American global power had begun, but it came with significant challenges and responsibilities. World War II reshaped the world in countless ways, but for the United States, it marked the beginning of its rise to global supremacy. The war had ended the isolationism of the past and propelled America into a position where its political, military, and economic power would shape global events for decades to come. This was not only the end of a war, but the birth of a new world order. The story of World War II is the story of America's emergence as a global superpower, and its legacy continues to define the world we live in today.